Thank you. Do you want to recap the question?
Sorry, you were asking about the. I mean, first of all, I should say that this is modelling, and we did some rigorous modelling using the Department for Transport model, but we also used the OECD, and we used some academics. And we believe that with expansion of Heathrow with a third runway, there would be another about 9.5 million passengers, domestic passengers at Heathrow by 2030. Now that's quite shortly after the runway, and 15.5 million extra UK passengers by 2050. About 5 million foreign passengers, and about 9 million by 2030 and 9 million by 2050, and roughly 15 million interlining passengers extra in 2030, and about the same, actually, almost slightly more by 2050. So the balance of expansion is as set out, with a combination of UK, foreign and interlining passengers.
Okay, thanks. So, according to your report then, around 3 in 10 of the new Heathrow passengers are simply people who would fly out of other London airports. Around 5 in 10 of the new passengers will be just transferring between international flights. You then add another 1 in 10 who would otherwise be using other UK airports. That's actually leaving just 1 in 10 of the flights providing a new connection for British passengers. That seems an awful lot of problems that we are creating in terms of air pollution, in terms of noise, in terms of the environment. That seems like an awful lot of problems to only provide such a small proportion of new connections for new passengers.
You're focusing on the initial phase in 2030, but of course it assumes the only possible benefit to the UK is from additional journeys. But if people are swapping from one airport that they would less prefer to fly from to Heathrow, because Heathrow becomes a more convenient airport, that is a benefit. It also assumes that there is no benefit at all to interlining passengers, whereas in fact, although we didn't focus heavily on their interests, they are important in that they do make viable routes which would otherwise not be viable just by domestic traffic. So they are important to sort of incubate new flights, actually, because otherwise you can't justify often a new destination unless you are pulling in transit passengers from elsewhere. So I don't think that we have set out very clearly what the overall combination of traffic is. Of course, you don't get additional environmental consequences if people shift from one airport to another, because they are removing the flights at the other airport. So there's some sort of double counting in your point. But we've not.
Can I just pick you up on that? Because in terms of air pollution, if we condense the problem and we compound the problem with more and more passengers, more and more movement around Heathrow, then away from other airports, and that is making the situation where it's already critical around Heathrow. We already have serious air pollution problems. We have serious legal challenges ahead, and to compound that problem by bringing in yet more passengers does seem to have a very negative environmental impact, because you're taking people away from other airports and bringing them to somewhere where there's already a massive pollution problem.
Well, there are, of course, several different elements to this. One is the local air quality, where, as I say, we believe that there are ways of handling that around Heathrow. There is also, of course, the question of climate change and carbon emissions. And our analysis suggests that a suboptimal allocation of flights, which we have now and which we would have if Heathrow were not expanded, would in fact be adverse from a climate change perspective, because you would have more flights, less full, travelling in a suboptimal way. So there are trade-offs to be made here, and our view is that the combination of that climate change argument plus the fact that you get more economically significant destinations from agglomerating traffic at Heathrow is a powerful argument in favour of doing it there.
In spite of the very, very significant air pollution obstacles that...
well, as I say, we don't think that they are insuperable obstacles. And part of this is a national problem, as you know, which has been highlighted by the Supreme Court, helpfully, in my view. And so there are measures that are needed to reduce air pollution in London overall, which will have a significant benefit for Heathrow. So we don't believe that these air quality issues are insuperable around Heathrow.
Your Commission openly admit that air pollution will breach legal limits, but simply claim they won't be as high as Marylebone Road is today. The GLA has described this approach as legally doubtful and in practice flawed, and suggests that this represents a level of risk no new investor would accept. Are you concerned that you're on very thin ice on this air pollution argument?
We've taken extensive legal advice on it, and we believe that the claims... I'm not sure it's made by the GLA. I think you're talking TfL, are you?
Yes, it was in a paper released by TfL.
A paper released by TfL. We believe they're wrong. We've taken advice from senior counsel experts in this area, and we prefer our advice. And also in terms of what investors say, well, investors have looked hard at this as we have, and they say they are ready to invest. And I don't know quite why TfL think that they know better the minds of investors than the investors themselves.
In the remaining time that I've got left, if we can just come on to the issue of noise as well. According to your report, around 5 in 10 new passengers will just be transferring between international flights. That's going to be very hard for Londoners who are overflown to accept that hundreds and thousands more Londoners will have to put up with more aircraft noise, ostensibly so that people can just stop off and pick up some duty-free at Heathrow.
The question that we were asked to answer was, as I said earlier, how the UK can be the position as Europe's most important aviation hub can be maintained. Being a hub implies that requires that you are able to agglomerate traffic. You have a benefit of doing so because, as a result, you get routes from your own city which you wouldn't get if you didn't attract traffic from other places in order to go onto that route. So it is inherent in the idea of being an aviation hub that you have some transfer traffic. That is the airline business model. And residents of London get a huge benefit from the fact that they have a very broad range of destinations available to them at Heathrow. Those destinations made viable by the fact that they are pulling in passengers from Los Angeles, transferring in London to go to Hyderabad. So that is inherent in being a hub, and therefore the question that was put to us pointed us in the direction we've taken.